just talk about even today. So many of the British papers are carrying mainstream stories that human DNA was designed by aliens, say scientists. Now, as a Bible-believing Christian, I get a lot of flack from people who say there's nothing in the Bible about this stuff. Well, there's a whole lot in the Bible about this stuff. They just never have done their homework, and this is the great deception that Jesus spoke of. We've already seen the momentous work that Tom Horn has done on Exo Vaticana and the whole alien disclosure, even to the point where the Catholic Church and the Catholic hierarchy is claiming they could baptize aliens. Now, there's a reason why that's not acceptable, because Jesus is called the Son of Man. He's not called the Son of Andromeda, okay? And he's the firstborn amongst the dead. So Jesus died for the very people that God had created initially in his image and likeness. But genetic engineering and now the human DNA was designed by aliens, say scientists. That's called panspermia. And that's probably the central theme of most science fiction movies, high-budget ones, is that obviously we were created by aliens. But then I asked the quadrillion-dollar question, who created the aliens? So the point is that now as we're on the talk radio together tonight, and whatever time this plays, but we're about the 14th of March, and so when you play it, it plays. But the thing that I think is important, I sent to you, Dave, the actual instructions for the Nazi U-boat commanders how to get into the inner Earth and how to basically access the land beneath the ice, the Antarctica. Now, even as we're going on the air tonight, how is this for cool? Dave, you and I are talking about this, and someone sends me an email and says Cliff High of WebBot fame has just stated that the steps were made for 19-foot-tall giants. You know, one of the hardest things to get people to understand is that the architecture of antiquity is built for entities, if you will, humanoids larger than the typical man size. You can go on my website, stevequayle.com. There's actually a brooch, a locket, that's in the illustrations of a giant greeting a smaller human, and that was found in the area called Nemrut, N-E-M-R-U-T, dog, D-A-G-H, and it's in Turkey. Well, what's fascinating, it's in the area of what are called the thrones of the seven kings. So these are giants. These are not normal human beings. They have a supernatural life force. Obviously, the Bible talks about the return to the days of Noah. Most people ignorantly say, well, that just means there's going to be a lot of violence. No, people don't understand when Joshua and Caleb went into the Promised Land, they saw giants that were so big that they said we were as grasshoppers in their sight, and so we were in theirs. And they talk literally about the land devouring its inhabitants. And, Dave, one of the things I think is critical to understand why the gates of hell have opened and why it's very important for people to understand this is cannibalism has come now mainstream. It's come so mainstream that CNN, the Cannibal News Network, as it's being called, actually showed a Muslim reporter eating human brains in a Hindu cannibal sex society. Now, and I'm talking sect, S-E-C-T. Also, I could say sick society. But would you, Dave Hodges, have ever imagined that you would be seeing cannibalism and all of the grossness and trash associated with that tied into WikiLeaks, tied into Pedogate? Let's forget Pizzagate. It's Pedogate. And now you see, if you will, a global spirit of perversion loose that basically even the Muslims are saying they can eat their enemies. I'm talking about cannibalism. So the thing is that what I believe is so important for people to understand is all the boundaries that God put in place to protect us from these fallen angels, from the demons, and I'll explain it again. A demon is a disembodied spirit of a dead giant. The giants are referred to as the Rephaim, from the root word Rapha, which means the dead. And, you know, you can't get away from recognizing that the architecture is different at a certain point prior to the flood of Noah to the architecture after. So now we fast forward to Antarctica, all the anomalies that people are seeing, all the famous people that have been down there, from the Pope, obviously Vladimir Putin, President Obama, John Kerry, even the President of Norway was there, Buzz Aldrin was there. All the people are going down there for a reason. And as you know, the internet is rife with different people reporting in. But it really, I would say, a slap in the face, attention getter is the fact that now there are so many anomalous events taking place in the Antarctic. For instance, as you know, your dad was involved in, black stuff. When I say black stuff, secret, top secret stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Lockheed Martin moves 1,000 engineers and aerospace engineers into the Antarctic, these are what we're being told, into the military, U.S. military section, and taken down in giant elevators to 2.5 miles beneath the ice. They're there to basically identify things they know that they have not already reverse engineered, but to take control of the technological lead there. So, we're hearing this. We're hearing civilians being taken out, and this is the U.S. military sector. Antarctica is a huge place. But what's fascinating is people don't understand that most of the research stations are way away from the important areas of the Antarctic, if you will, continent. So when you add these things up, all of the different stories, all the different eyewitnesses, and by the way, I just had a man return from Argentina, very well-placed source, talking to different intelligence agencies, and they are telling him the same thing I'm telling your listeners tonight, that there is so much from antiquity. Now, let me deal with something that people just can't realize. They always try and quote the law that says because the gravity on the Earth is what it is, that you couldn't have giants today. They always rule out the fact that these are, if you will, a different life form and a different life force. These are not just metaphors or colloquialisms for, NBA players or weightlifters. These entities in history ran all the way from 9 feet to 18 feet to 24 feet. So the reason why this becomes problematic to the powers that be is they can't keep a lid on everything all the time. And it's like someone has given the go-ahead to allow gradual revelation, if you will. There was a time when you and I talking about this stuff would have got us some visits from the Men in Black. Now they don't care. They want to use you, Dave Hodges. They want to use me, Steve Quayle. They want to use whoever has a forum talking about this stuff to, number one, gauge people's reactions, and to, number two, see how advanced, and when I say that, how forward-thinking we are as to the ramifications. Because you know this, the Defense Department will never tell the truth, or unless they're forced to, and never it's the whole truth. It's always just bits and pieces. So God in his mercy, it is my opinion, are giving you the puzzles you have, the puzzle pieces you have. I have Doug Hagman. Those of us who write about this, L.A. Marzulli, Tim Alberino, Tom Horn, Dr. Michael Lake, all these different people are getting different pieces of the puzzle. But when you step back, Dave, now the puzzle's never been clearer.
It really hasn't, Steve, and there's a real coherent picture that's beginning to form. And as I look at this, we're really uncovering our past that has been obscured from humanity, and the past is coming full circle right into the present. Do you think this is going to actually lead to some kind of disclosure?
Well, I believe that's what we're seeing right now, is graduated disclosure, but it's ultimately, I think beyond that, Dave, it's going to lead to the bigger issue, what Jesus spoke about, that if the days weren't shortened for the elect's sake, that there'd be no flesh left alive. Number one, with the resulting release of all of the giants, and look, I've spent 40 years of my life on this, okay? And I've got thousands and thousands of footnotes, and the amount of evidence to what I'm saying surpasses the paid trolls or the paid shills or just the ignorant donkeys that have never had an education. I'm trying to be kinder and gentler. I challenge them to go and do your homework, because, again, here's the thing. It's not leading to disclosure. It's leading to domination. I believe there's, 1.3, 1.4 billion Catholics. Now, traditional Catholics aren't going to buy the lie, but this Pope has gone out of his way to make sure that people recognize that they're ready and willing to receive, if you will, aliens. And you know what's more interesting, along with this, is the rhetoric is increasing along with the sightings of UFOs. You've probably seen that.
Well,
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I sent you, Dave, that whole Nazi thing. You know, the cigar-shaped craft that people are seeing? Those schematics I sent you, Dave, were from 1947.
and that seems like it's almost 20 years ahead of its time in terms of when this was being reported in the media.
Well, and not only that, but I think even more importantly than that is that at that point they were talking about some of these craft being able to go 300,000 kilometers an hour. I don't think that was lost on you. So when I sent you this, and I'll send you the link, or I already have sent you the link, but you can put it up if you want, whenever, however you release this show. I think it's important for people to see this because, again, when I wrote the book Empire Beneath the Ice, which, by the way, is gone worldwide, and there's no way, and I give God the glory for this, there's no way I could have known ahead of time that this was going to happen, that all this would be released. And I think it's important that people understand what's going on in the Antarctic is pivotal to disclosure, but it's also pivotal to the alien domination. How many years have we seen that? Now, in what I sent to Dave, I sent him the signature piece by H. Kohlmeyer, and under the signature field, and basically there was 1,300 copies of this special laboratory report. But one of the most important things was basically the Reich-Deutschen map, basically, from the cave of the Earth, gives a step-by-step guide, I'm reading this, to reach the inner world of, ready for this, Agartha using a U-boat. Now, Dave, it was absolutely so specific in their descent angles, in their speed, in the amount of direction they have to go. Did that not surprise you? This is a submariner instructions, and they said it's imperative, that's strict to follow. Now, when you saw that, what was your first thought?
You may laugh at me, Steve, when I say this, but I was reminded of the old Jules Verne movie when they descended to the center of the Earth. And
you're right on.
Unknown pathways and so forth, and specific directions to follow. That's what it put me in the mind of when I first saw it.
Do you remember the old Doug McClure movies where basically the land before time and and the land that time forgot?
Yes.
Doug McClure was what was his name? He was on The Big Valley. And he was a blonde-haired guy, but he did 2 movies, possibly 3, and if people want to go look on the internet, they can find them. But the thing is that they get picked up, I think, either whaling or the ship sinks, and they get picked up by Nazi U-boats, and they're taken into this land that time forgot. And they would have had to have been familiar with some of this stuff, Dave. So we're talking about, a theme that was in Hollywood, and I think these movies were made in the late 50s. If I remember right, maybe possibly early 60s. But again, it's astonishing to me that how much of the Hollywood screening and scripting was based around even this. Now, ladies and gentlemen, and Dave can put it up, but again, I'll put it up one more time as a headline after we go off the air. But I'm sorry, Dave, it depends on whether this plays, but you have it. But in the document that I saved, that I saved and sent to Dave, it shows the different from Hanubu 1, 2, 3, and 4, the original flying saucer designs that the Nazis re-engineered. Now, people can laugh, they can lie, but what we were talking about earlier, Dave, was the Andromeda device, which literally holds multiple spacecraft and literally has multiple, if you will, pilots. And it tells exactly that this thing can hold 130 men. It's got world capability of 100%. And, the idea is that this is so much farther. Theoretically, speed would be 300,000. Here's where everybody's 300,000 kilometers per second. I'll break it down for you. That's light speed.
Is that light speed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's
186,284 miles, per hour. Actually, it's even faster than that. So and then they go on to say that the unknown is literally unlimited. That the
Steve.
range is unlimited.
If you're introducing
And the
light speed here, you're also talking about time travel.
Well, and by the way, the Nazis perfected Stargate technology in 1945, 46. The movie Hellboy, and I've talked about this before, but I was told by multiple four-star generals, active duty and special forces, that the device in Hellboy, where it shows the Nazis basically and their U.S. GIs watching on as two people step through the gate. One of them looks like Dr. Zarkov. I don't know if you ever saw the movie, but from Flash Gordon, and the woman looks like the typical blonde, black leather coat, vamp. And so the thing is that it's really important that understanding this, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about December 1944. Now, I want to skip to an article that's also in this, Dave, and if you want to put it up or whatever you want to do with your own articles, but the UFO secret revealed, and it was from 1988, the National Examiner. But here's where it gets interesting. I'm quoting the last paragraph. The aliens helped the Germans possibly because they were at a certain technological development stage. Perhaps they were technologically speaking a similar language. Friedrich believes that Hitler's last battalion will come into action when the world is deep in an economic crisis. Then the space Nazis will occupy strategic points in the world and will rule the world. Now, that's pretty interesting. That's almost pretty close to 35 years ago, correct? I'm sorry, 29, 30 years ago about. But what's even more astonishing, when I was doing the investigation for Rudolf Hess, who spent his life, obviously, in Spandau prison, he had gone to the British government as an emissary to try and get the British to have a truce and talk the Americans into it because of this great revelation understanding. And I want to make it clear, the Nazis got the majority of their technology, according to Oberth and according to Dr. Werner von Braun and others, from, quote, aliens and spirit entities, okay? They make it very clear, Dave. And I catalog it, I basically footnote it, and you can read about it. One of the reasons why my book, Empire Beneath the Ice, and I'm not just giving a book report, but I'm telling people, has gone over worldwide, is because even as people are reading the book, the headlines concerning Antarctica are, if you will, establishing the punctuation in real time. It's like not only are they reading the book, Empire Beneath the Ice, but the headlines of the day are basically attenuating it. And so, the Empire Beneath the Ice is now upon us. So the tracking of different events going on in Antarctica. And by the way, this is a big, big secret, yet the secret's out because there are people in the military, as you know, when the truth is out there, there are people that will eventually get the truth out. Now, unfortunately, Americans' reality deficit disorder has basically made them numb and dumb to real history, and so they believe history is what they see in a video game console on their 60-inch TV that's watching them play, listening to them play. And I tell people this, remember this, everyone, when you're playing video games, the video games are playing you. Dave, I used to tell people this, and they thought I was crazy. And you know how it's like, no matter what you tell people, you're damned at the beginning, and then you're ridiculed kind of in the middle, and then at the end, they basically claim it's their revelation. What did you know in the first place? So understand that with brainwave technology and brainwave monitoring and brainwave, let's just call it brainwashing or brain impartation of extracranial thoughts, processes, and patterns, you're being programmed. Again, I know this, I got to be redundant here. It's not that you're just playing the video game is playing you.
Well, they even find that in these video games that these young kids play, that these kids can't separate reality from fiction when they're playing the game. And a lot of the chemical reactions they're having when they play the high prone violence games are addicting. It's almost like a cocaine and meth kind of addiction. And they spend literally hours on it like an addict would. And so you're absolutely right about the video games playing them. I want to basically acknowledge, too, what you said before, where Warner von Braun and other former Nazis said they got their technology from the aliens. I had this conversation with my father, who worked with captured German scientists at Martin Lockheed, and then it was called Martin Marietta at Littleton, Colorado, in the mountains outside Littleton. And I asked him, I said, what did they tell you about where this technology came from? And he said, to a person, they said they got it from the aliens. But what's interesting about it, Steve, I think it was highly compartmentalized, and here's why I say that. My father said he never talked to one German who personally met with an alien, but they were told by their commanding officers that that's where the technology came from. What do you know about that?
Well, first of all, I know this, that some of the greatest statements, when you've got the father of modern rocketry, and two of them, Oberth, Oberth, you've got Dr. Werner von Braun, who was the head of NASA, and then you also have Goddard, by which obviously the Goddard Space Center is named after. When you have them all talking about this, first of all, Dave, when I talk about aliens, you can talk about extra dimensionals, you can talk about extraterrestrials, but these people actually had, according to all of the research that I've been able to find, and others, by the way, there's many researchers out there dealing with the Third Reich, it was the spirit, in other words, the literal seances and the literal occult books that led to the invocation of evil spirits. Most people don't recognize the fact that when you're getting advanced mathematics in realms you didn't even know exist until you're taught those realms, somebody is graduated from evil spirit school with a PhD in deception. And so the idea is that there were two sources. And basically even Oberth made this statement, as well as Ben Rich, the head of Skunk Works, who's called the modern father of stealth aircraft. When you see them, they said there's two sources of UFOs out there, ours and theirs. Now, Ben Rich worked for the same company your father did. Actually, he was the head of it until 1972. And there are a lot of people that want to claim he didn't make the statements he made, but he did make the statements. He's on record. Eyewitnesses who passed away in the last 20 years, obviously, who had been, in their 80s and 90s, said they were present and they knew exactly what I meant. Here's the deal. It's hard for people to understand that our technology is so far in advance that all the Saturn rocketry, obviously all of the shuttles, all of that which has gone before was nothing but a three-ring circus to keep the world away from the knowledge of how advanced the technology was. Even now, around the world, they're talking about the 2.5-mile in diameter subaqua craft that's moving, and there's another one now that they just picked up in the mainstream. When I say the mainstream, I don't mean like the New York Times or anything, okay? I'm talking about major newspapers with hundreds of thousands of subscribers and others that are picking up. There's multiples of these ships. So, I always get a fascinating chuckle by basically people that deny everything, yet these people are in the gamers world. And I believe this, that when we look back on the inception of video games were probably one of the greatest experiments in mind control in order to separate people into a virtual world and keep them out of the actual world where they'd ever see what the real world is like. It's kind of a mouthful, but what I mean is that they were produced fantasy to divorce them from reality.
You just said a mouthful right there, because I think what we're looking at is the programming of almost the entire young males in this country.
Oh, absolutely. And what what have we produced in that way? I get, what I've called, some people, I won't use it on your show, but the P word, I call them the meow men, okay? And contrast the Meow Mix commercial, meow, 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 to the Battle Hymn of the Republic. If you notice even now how decadent men's fashions are becoming, they're dressing the men up like androgynous castrata, and obviously in the Renaissance, those were castrated men who were dilettantes. They dressed up like women. So the point is that we have right now, in my opinion, don't get mad at Dave. You want to get mad. We have a group of emasculated men. We have a group of estrogenated men. We have a absolute war party of Amazons, and you'll have to go into Greek mythology, the warrior women, the Xena, the warrior princess types. And if you see a complete role reversal, and even the Bible, it says that God is against because all the men in the midst of thee are women. I think it's in Nahum. And I could be wrong, either Nahum or Hosea right now. But the point is, Dave, is that that's a function of God's judgment on a land. And unfortunately, you talk about role reversal and an identity crisis. We're talking about, and if you think about this, it makes perfect sense. You're watching, if you will, the Western male be bred out of existence. The idea of sex robots, and this is important. This has to do everything with Antarctica. If people understood that cloning, and you and I talked about this on a previous show, but imagine when a robot has skin that feels like the real thing, that has an AI program that can communicate with you, but not only can the AI program communicate you, AI is artificial intelligence, but it can read your thoughts. So before you even think they're going to respond, a normal woman or a normal man, unless they've lived as husband and wife usually, can pick up when the other one's thinking something. But can you imagine how far? Now, what is the purpose of robot sex? It's to destroy the seed of humanity. And this is something else that people better understand. When the Muslims make the statement that the men in the West you can't even breed with your women. I'm quoting one, breed with your women anymore, and our women's wombs will become our weapon of, what is it called, where they rape, pillage, and plunder, conquest, okay? That's why they have multiple wives and multiple children. They believe in that. So conquest doesn't always come out of the barrel of a gun. Conquest comes out by those who can identify the failings of a society and then build on those failures and basically intercept and provide. It's the Hegelian dialectic. Well, the problem is identified, the solution is provided to the problem, but it ends up in the total enslavement of the targeted population. So we're in toast. It's the same thing in the world of science. It's the same thing in the world of religion. We're going to be told that Jesus is not the Son of God. We'll be shown videos claiming that the aliens created Jesus to give us something to believe in. The entire fracturization or the fractal world is going to come into a battle with the real world, and people are going to literally not know which way to turn, what to do. They're going to question their own sanity. And Jesus said men's hearts failing them for fear for looking after those things coming upon the earth. So as these things come upon the earth, look, hey, it's not Dave Hodges and Steve Quayle. They're posting YouTube videos of triangular-shaped spacecraft that go from 3 lights to a center light and then disappear and jump space. It's not us, Dave, that's making all of the eyewitness reports. We report on it, and then, basically the naysayers, the trolls, the shills, and the paid propagandists, you carried the article, and I don't know if it was a year ago, but you carried the article on the Department of Propaganda, and now we're seeing it full fury, are we not?
Absolutely. It's gone full force, Steve. It's in our face.
So, I just want people to know something. I believe, and this is critical, I get accused of talking about this stuff to sell my books. I give a lot of books away, especially to veterans, widows, widowers, anybody that is really got an honest heart, and I can tell by their email. Like, here's one I'll never answer. Here's a key. I got better things to do with my money, but send you one of my books. Well, my answer to that is do with your money what you do with your money, because you're not going to appreciate the book. So I do what I can do to help people, but I'm not talking just like you. You don't go on the radio and you don't publish daily everything you've published because we're trying to rip off people. We're trying to scare the you-know-what out of them so we can reap the benefits. And have you ever noticed that the people that usually knock you, knock me, knock Doug Hagman, slander us incessantly through the internet, most of them will use anonymous names, and you try and answer them back, and they've spoofed somebody.
Exactly.
These are cowards, ladies and gentlemen. These are cowards, yet there's a lot of them that live in pretty amazing military bases that do everything they can to undermine. By the way, Dave, as of the 14th of March, Timothy Alberino, who's the director and the writer for the True Legends of DVD series, who works with me, his entire YouTube channel was taken down arbitrarily by somebody big, and YouTube sent him an email, and I'll send it to you so you can see it, saying he can never post on YouTube again. He can never, put up anything or comment. They completely shut him down.
What reason did they give, Steve?
They would not give him a reason. He emailed them, I guess with YouTube, and you know more about this probably than I do, but you only get one shot at challenging them. And so, we're trying to figure out who has enough power. Well, you know who has enough power. The Alberino analysis hasn't even been kept up for the last 4 months. He tries to post one story, and they shut him down, and they shut him out. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would encourage you all that listen to the Common Sense Show, that listen to me, that listen to Dave, Doug Hagman, those who give you the most important information, you better start taking it seriously, because, Dave, I don't think we've got that much longer. I can't give you a date, but I just want to say something. The situation in North Korea is unlike anything that's ever happened before. The Japanese are so technologically advanced that when Japan says we will not allow a first strike against us, they're serious. Most people don't understand how far in the future that Japan's technology, especially their missile systems, their microelectronics, I'd say even nanoelectronics, and, because of their treaty after World War II, they have everything componentized, and they can put stuff together fast. But their area of robot warfare is unparalleled by anybody in the world. So this thing, when you see Japan, and if you see another launch or two against Japan, or even the waters surrounding Japan, or what Japan claims as their territorial waters, you better know that it's time to take this serious. Dave, you have studied history. You write about it. We are in a time period that most people can't relate to, and I want to remind everybody that listens to this show that it is the Muslims' desire to initiate World War III in order to bring about the return of the Imam Mahdi.
Mm-hmm.
That has to happen after a nuclear holocaust. But it also, if people go back to Albert Pike's World War III, or the three wars statement that he made supposedly, and whether it's Pike or not, somebody believes in that scenario, that, basically they'd generate the Third World War would be between the Mohammedans, the Christians, and the Jews, and they'd get everybody killing each other off, and then at the appropriate time, they bring on the pure doctrine of Lucifer. So that's where the whole idea of out of the ashes of the phoenix does the New World Order rise. That's why you're seeing borders, language, culture all destroyed. And that's why you're seeing Donald Trump stand up against the very forces of hell. And I fight more with Christians that tell me I'm leading Christians astray, because I stand behind Donald Trump, because I've made this clear. I want to make this clear again. Before he won, I said, when I see who hates him, when I see who opposes him, and when I see what's going on to discredit, destroy, and do everything I can, I said, that tells me that God's going to use that guy, whether Donald Trump knows him or not. And at this point, all I can say is Donald Trump sticks up for Jesus and Christians, and every hater from hell goes after him. But what's most challenging is the fact that I deal with probably, I don't know what your ratio is, Dave, but I deal with at least 30 to 40% of the Christians always trying to tell me I'm leading people astray by saying I support Trump. I support whatever God supports, and I know this, that, and people say, well, that's a political solution. You see what hell is supporting. Hell supports pedophilia. Hell supports child sacrifice. Hell supports abortion. Hell supports cannibalism. Hell supports the most vile and wicked political scene in the world, ready to sacrifice 280 million people as long as they can head to their bunkers in a world war. And these guys are capable of taking us to world war. Dave, it only takes one push on one button on a briefcase, or from someone who even has more control than the briefcase, and those people exist, overseers. The point being, and it's a whole different world. So, people better, and I know this, they better recognize, as hell is being poured out upon them, they'd better recognize that Jesus' words stand as true today as they ever have. The tree is known by the fruit it bears, yet more people are willing, as, quote, professing, and I call them claimants to Christianity, to claim that, Donald Trump is the Antichrist. I've even heard that Donald Trump is the little horn in Daniel. All this stuff. But these people can't even give you Bible verses. Oh, they can quote it, but they can't even give you the basics that Jesus said, by their fruit ye shall know them. A good tree produces good fruit. An evil tree produces evil fruit. And boy, we're in for a harvest of evil fruit. And you know what happens when you get a lot of evil fruit? The smell gets overwhelming. So we're seeing the putrefying of the values that once made this country great. And by the way, the military-industrial complex behind the scenes, they're at the end of the day, they're out for themselves. Not all in the military are, but the complex is.
Well, they always have been. I mean, Eisenhower
Yep.
had their number, almost 6 decades ago. Steve, I
Yep.
think you're right on the money with what you're saying here about what we're facing spiritually. But I want to stay right here in the natural realm for a second. I'm growing increasingly concerned, and I printed something about this again and put a podcast out about this. Mike Pence. Everything that I've seen from him speaks to disloyalty to Trump. And now today, Julian Assange came out and said Pence is part of a deep state coup to replace Trump. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's true, and I think it's real. And, there's a couple things that really bother me. And that's one of them. And Pence's trade posture and position on NAFTA, GATT, obviously TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership that Trump is against. The fact that Hillary Clinton's saying that, now she could be putting a red herring out there, too, to try and divide it. But here's what I don't get, Dave, and maybe you get this, and you can explain this to me because I don't get it. Why, when the Assistant Deputy Director of the FBI said the F word, F them and F Trump, and why when Comey has shown his total disloyalty, why are those guys still there? And where, next question, where is Pompeo, the guy that is the head of the CIA? Where is he? Do you have an answer?
No. In fact, when I was interviewing Doug Hagman on my show this past Sunday, I was saying the same thing. Trump is risking his presidency by failing to purge the deep state that he can get his hands on.
Well, again, and the thing is that I think he's, you can be sincere, but you can be sincerely set up, okay? Even the Secret Service guy came out and said as long as he stays in the White House, his life's in danger. Here's what I propose, and if anybody knows Donald Trump or has access to whoever's got his ear, he needs to basically, and he has every right as commander-in-chief, to start giving those guys voice stress analysis, lie detector. He needs to get rid of everybody that has ever worked for Hillary or Obama in the White House, first and foremost. Then he needs to recall the generals and the admirals, the fleet officers and the flag guys, that Obama kicked out or forced out, because there's your loyalty. In essence, some of the work's already been done for him. I don't understand why Mattis, now he's withdrawn the nomination, but why would General Mattis put basically the woman that he put in there even as a nominee in the first place?
Yeah,
and why didn't they, there's just too many questions. Well, here's the deal. Only God can reveal the hidden sins of wickedness. It's like we're all Ezekiel peering through the wall. And you do that, I do that, we do that. When we get glimpses of what's really going on, or information bits that we can go out, we're seeing right now, in my opinion, a full-scale revolution unfolding. And I would say this, the Republicans have as many communist traitors in their ranks as the Democrats, this isn't a political statement. How can, Paul Ryan's announcement, and he said, oh, that's just months ago, and that's not relevant any longer, when he said, he will not stand behind Trump or never endorse him, his famous statement. And then you've got John McCain, who's tied up to his eyeballs in, friendship photos with ISIS, and people knowing on the insiders who's running guns. So the point is that we're in a position now where everything that has been, quote, sacrosanct to the American mindset is going to be challenged. And is being challenged, because those people that you thought were the good guys, that you got the rah-rah, that you go out and wave the flag and go to the baseball games and eat genetically modified hot dogs with genetically modified glyphosated bread, and then down a Coke, or whatever soft drink that's got however many teaspoonfuls of sugar that attack your immune system. Well, all that stuff's coming out now, and Dave, I'm on record. I think you know this, and I've got to say this, that God gave me a word years ago, 7 years ago. People can say, God doesn't talk to people. Well, let me just share this. Before there was a Russia and China ascending in power, and it was 7 years ago, first year of Obama, or second year of Obama's reign of insanity, the words I uttered were simply this. Before God allows America to be destroyed by the Russians and Chinese in a nuclear war, he's going to reveal the sins of the leaders to the people and the people's sins before God. All this stuff about pedophilia, all this stuff about perversion, all this stuff about murder, all this stuff about graft and corruption and bribery, all this stuff is coming out, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. It's coming out faster than we can report it.
Right, and commensurate with the coming out, the tensions are rising. Now, what that says to me, and I talked to a couple of my friends today, one of them is a very, very bright, very successful businessman, and I said to him, do you know what scares me? He said, well, what are you really worried about, Steve? I said, I know the word that I was given, and it will stand the test of time, whether God really gave it or not. And by the way, Dave, I want to make this clear. It's not about me. Listen, I claim nothing of special anything except that, I'm born again by the blood of the Lord Jesus Christ and saved, but I'm called unto his purpose. But again, we're talking nuclear war. We're talking the entire flaring up of everything, and people just go on like it has nothing to do with them. And I'm sorry, but it has everything to do with them, and we're right there. My question is that I wake up with and I go to sleep with, whenever I do sleep, very rarely, and I'm sorry, but that's the truth. The fact is how much more revelation will God allow before he lets go? He's in control, and I believe God's people prayed, interceded, are still praying and interceding, and God gave us reprieve. I get more crap from Christians, I'm sorry for the word, but it's true, by professing claimants to Christianity when I say that God gave us reprieve. I can prove it in the history of Israel. I can prove it in the history of nations. When nations repented, i.e. Nineveh wasn't a bunch of Jews. People always say that, well, that was just, no, Nineveh wasn't a bunch of Jews, yet they repented, and God gave them 100 years. Now, he destroyed them totally, lock, stock, and barrel after that. It may have been 120 years, but when Nineveh repented, a pagan nation, God stopped his judgment upon them. Sodom and Gomorrah did not fare that way, neither did Tyre and Sidon, neither will the West Coast and the East Coast of the United States. We're seeing it now, Dave. We're seeing more military skirmishes and encounters and actual shoot-downs that most people never know about or hear on the news. And I'm telling you point blank, We are right now where Dmitry Duduman did say this, and Jackie, you're right. I just got an email from somebody named Jackie. Remember this, Dmitry Duduman's prophecy is there's going to be a civil war. And when the internal conflict started by the communists, and too bad in Dmitry's day before the Lord took him home that he didn't say, and the Soros-funded Clintonites, okay, and the helping Ryanites and all the others that are helping this is something that I don't think people can understand, Dave. They can't wrap their brains around the fact that we are going to see, 500 now sanctuary cities, according to Matt Drudge. They're going to refuse to go along with federal law, and watch what happens when the riots break out, when the federal aid is cut off, and that's what it's all about. It's all about rioting. It's all about internal riots, because the Russian defense posture and the Chinese, they both want civil war. It makes their lives a whole lot easier.
I agree 100% with what you just said, and we're being pushed headlong into it, and it's by design. This is what Soros is about. The indicators I'm getting, there's going to be an American Spring, a la the Arab Spring. It's going to look very much the same, and we're going to have a very long, hot summer.
Well, and I pray that we make it that long. I believe it's God's prayers of his people. Now, look, I'm not trying to make this spiritual, but I know this. God's people prayed. I believe God answers prayer. And, when you get into the natural, the things in the unseen world, the spiritual, affect the things that are in the natural. And you and I, Dave Hodges, I don't know if you've, shared with some of the spooky people showing up around you, but more and more, anybody who tells the truth, I made it to the Harvard list of fake news, and Harvard, the hellions against reality, vicious and rapaciously disgusting. That, by the way, is my acrostic for Harvard, just for your show right now. So again, the prophet Jeremiah spoke, and look, here's the thing. I can type everything you and I are saying, or I can put it in the context of the nations that have gone before us, because King Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun. That which will be has already been.
Yes.
Dave, you've written the script to the coming war. I've screamed about the script to the coming war. We both are on talk radio or on Skype or whatever talking about the coming war. It's all unfolding. But guess what? People just don't believe it, and they don't want to believe it. And therefore, even if you gave them 100, let's say 100 points of evidence that were indisputable, that 100 other people would verify, because they don't want to take personal responsibility for their actions, they will deny it unto their own death. That's why I call it denial unto death and destruction.
Yeah, that's a nice term that really is, we see this in sociology when it's called cognitive dissonance. Steve, you just motivated me to do something here, and what I'm going to do, I wrote about a 7-pronged attack a year and a half ago, and this was given to me by not one, but by 4 people who are well connected with the military establishment, both present and past, and there's now an 8th one, and it's called What's Happening in CalExit. And Steve, I think you were supposed to say this, so I would hear it. And I'm going to resurface this article and add the 8th in there because, there's something called confirmation bias. The Nazis popularized this. The more you tell a lie and the bigger the lie, the more people believe it. Well, it's also true in the opposite. The more you tell the truth and the bigger the item, the more that people will believe it. Steve, we have to hammer this point home because our people are not prepared for what's coming.
Oh, absolutely not. And see, look, here's the thing. Here's the other thing, Dave. Show me in history where people paid attention to people's warnings before the warnings came to pass, and then they looked in retrospect. Let me give you a powerful statement. This is not original to me, but it was given to me in prayer. I was complaining to the Lord, and I do complain, okay, saying, God, what's the use of warning people? I know you've done that. You get enough, stuff thrown at you. What's the use of warning when nobody listens? Nobody takes it seriously. And I think I've shared this with you. If you haven't heard this is a great word. I didn't make this up, and I didn't invent it, but it was given to me instantly. No word of God spoken by a man of God is ever received by the people of God at the time it's given. Jesus said it this way to the religious Jews of his day. He said this, which of the prophets have your fathers not killed? You know?
What a great accurate
Yeah.
statement.
Listen, I can't, all I can tell you is this. Somebody says, why do you always quote scripture, you Bible-thumping, hypocrite, blah, 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 blah. Because in the scripture, I find the absolute truth revealed, but also the reflection of human nature. Human nature, as God warns his people, and it says this, surely the Lord God will do nothing except he reveals his secrets to his servants the prophets. In the New Testament, the testimony of Jesus, spirit of prophecy. But yet, guess what? The people don't want to believe it. You know why? It interferes. And I'll say this, Dave. I used to think it was all cognitive dissonance, and you and I have talked at length about that.
Right.
It's not. It's personal responsibility and accountability. I'll tell you how I see it. People will call me and they'll say, God spoke to me, woke me up, and told me to buy silver. From me. I don't cold call anybody. I think you know that.
I do.
I return calls. I don't coke. And then when the market goes against them, you dirty, and they use the B word, call me all sorts of names, say I screwed them, et cetera, et cetera. And yet the bottom line is they're the ones calling me, telling me that God told them. So here's what I'm trying to say, is that God's people do not want to take personal accountability and responsibility for their actions. God, when he judges Christians, not according to salvation, those of us who believe, but according to our works, the great, if you will, the judgment seat of Jesus Christ is different than the great white throne judgment. The great white throne judgment are for the people that, depart from me, ye who work iniquity, into everlasting darkness. But for the Christians, we're going to give account for our faithfulness. Look, if you're a business owner and you've got somebody that's really producing versus somebody who's slacking off, you may keep the slacker on as an employee, but the guy who's busting his who's making a lot of effort to help you and really likes what he's doing, you're going to promote him. And it's a parable of the stewards. Again, God's practical. And so I would just tell people this. Don't hide behind, Quayle's crazy. Hodges is nuts. Hagmans are this or that. Or, I've heard every manner of lie, slander, character assassination, innuendo, every form of vomit that can be thrown. And yet, the people that just repeat it, they don't understand. That vomit will tend to smell in their own life. And what happens when you know what happens when people smell vomit, they start to regurgitate themselves. It's almost an auto response. So, here's the thing. People have got to learn to take responsibility and accountability. So when you hear Dave Hodges or me or anybody getting raked over the coals, ask those people what they've done. Ask those people why they use chicken manure names like BSR 135 or BSR 150. That just happens to be a real one. I may have a couple of things wrong. Or they use these names, God's faithful servant. Well, I want to say something. Those of you who are cowards, you better read about who goes into the lake of fire, because it's the cowardly, the fearful, and the unbelieving. In other words, you can claim that you're some keyboard warrior, but you've never been in the battle. You've never basically had to stand up for your faith, yet you'll stand against anybody who does, and you'll have your little clucking crew of hellish furies, and furies were women who basically, go look it up in Greek mythology, all you harpies. And again, Dave, you see, the thing is that we've got to get to the point where people understand how it's real. And I maintain that the minute an atom bomb goes off anywhere, there'll be people that will look out and see the mushroom cloud and go back and start cursing their iPad or whatever, their game console, whatever they are, and you can tell I'm not a gamer, and basically go wondering why it doesn't work. You follow me? That's how remote and out of touch with reality they are.
That's why I'm resurfacing how we're going to be attacked, and I'm going to also throw in a little bit of the defectors with the scissors plan. The people need to hear this, and Steve, I think they got to hear it over and over to finally get it.
Oh, absolutely. Repeat it, and you said it earlier. What did Hitler say, or one of his guys? Tell a lie, tell a big enough lie, keep telling the lie. Well, that's exactly what's going on in the mainstream news media right now. If anybody has a brain or has even the slightest urge to know the truth, turn off the vomit brokers. The vomit brokers are the three-letter people, and I don't care who your favorite is, and start honestly reading history, reading the things that documentation. You know, how many times have we talked about over the years? And in my case, I don't remember. How long have you been on talk radio now? And forgive me, I just don't remember.
I'm in my 10th year.
Okay, and I'm on 20 year 25 as a talk radio show host. And after that amount of time, unfortunately, you go, what can you tell people they haven't already told them? But then we forget, I forget, I don't know if you do, that we got a whole new rash of listeners every time this light switch goes on in somebody's mind. So you say it again. You say it again. You say it until people get it. My question is, Dave, how many times do you have to say it before people get it?
As many times as it takes. Steve, we're just about out of time, and what I wanted to do, this has been, whoa, we covered territory tonight, but I wanted to give you an opportunity, in addition to your website at stevequayle.com, you're into some TV ventures now. Tell the listening audience how they can follow that good work.
Well, it's really easy, Dave, and thank you. They can go on TrueLegendsTheSeries.com. We've come out with some DVDs that are very, very highly acclaimed worldwide. The third one, called Holocaust of Giants, will be available probably around mid-April to the 1st of May. We're going to have and this is really important, for the first time in history, I'm putting together a True Legends conference in Branson, Missouri, September 15th through the 17th. And I would encourage everyone to come. We're going to have the experts in the whole field. We're going to have myself, Dr. Thomas Horn, going to have Dr. Michael Lake, L.A. Marzulli, Timothy Alberino, Anselm P. Rambla, Derek Gilbert, who just wrote a magnificent book called The Inception. And it's going to be more like a teach-and-R, which, each speaker will speak from an hour to an hour and a half and then answer questions pertaining to that speaker, because I hated, Dave, having to sit through a bunch of speakers. That's why I don't conferences, and not being able to ask questions of the guy that generated the question in the first place. So people can go on my website, stevequayle.com, click on the right-hand side where it says conference, True Legends Conference, and all the information there, where to register and everything, and we expect we'll sell out very quickly because the response is voluminous on a daily basis. Also, for people wanting to get real with the precious metals, they can email me at steve777@stevequayle.com and put metals. Now, here's what I tell everybody, Dave. I've said it on your program. I want to reiterate it. If you have under $1,000, don't buy metals. Buy extra food. The volcanism that's going off, the radiation from Fukushima, the entire food chain in the ocean, specifically the Pacific Ocean, is dead and dying. And the radiation that's being spewed across the planet is off the charts and being lied to you about. So take, if it's under $1,000, go buy extra food. But if you want me to contact you, you just send me an email, steve777@stevequayle.com, and say metals, and I'll respond to you.
Exactly.
So, again, it's critical.
And Steve, I want to interject this too. I also have an ad up for Steve. It follows nearly every article. It's also on my website at thecommonsenseshow.com. Just click it on, go right to Steve. And right there is his phone number contact as well too. So in case you forget Steve's email, number of ways to get a hold of him. Steve, you know how I promote Renaissance Precious Metals on my show? What I tell my audience,
yeah, I've heard you.
Yeah, you want to convert your soon-to-be worthless cash, and as God is my witness, this is true. You need to get into precious metals. You need to diversify, because the best thing that's going to happen is your currency is going to be devalued. The worst thing that's going to happen, it's going to be gone and worthless.
Let me say this before we shut off, Dave. It was reported less than a week ago that the Treasury only had $450 billion to operate on, and now today it's down to $66 billion. I believe that's the Illuminati signal that they're going to pull the plug on the economy. By pulling the plug, they'll claim a massive cyber attack. This isn't scare tactics, but how do you lose close to $390 billion, literally in a matter of days? So what they're going to do is they're going to hang this on Donald Trump. They're going to crash the system. They're going to initiate riots. They're going to lock people down. Now, I don't know that happens this week, but I'm just telling you, that's their plan. I don't know when they implement it, but you better have some money out of the system in your hot little hands in gold and silver, because when this thing kicks off, and obviously on Friday, it's believed the Fed's going to raise the rate at least 0.5%, then followed by another 0.5% in April. Dave, the closing of stores are closing because the middle class is murdered. It's not no longer, having a hard time. The middle class doesn't exist. The malls and all of the chain restaurants and all of the department stores grew up to basically satisfy the needs of a booming and bustling middle class. And I would remind all the billionaires out there that all you guys started at a level, unless you inherited it, less than where you are now. And so don't forget the little people. And I believe, too, people ask me this, what do? We have no money to buy food. We have no money to buy metals. Well, that's why you don't buy metals until you got food. But God will provide. The same way he took care of everybody, he will provide. But those of you who could provide and arrogantly think that, well, I don't have to worry about it now, you better consider, and my scripture that I live on, Dave, is this, very wise scripture, take heed lest when you think you stand, you fall. I remind myself of every day. So that's why, people better become circumspect, because we are dealing, again, we've talked about World War III, and I encourage you to bring out that, redo that, and make it contemporary, because that was a very important article. I'd say that's one of the most important ones you've ever written.
Well, yeah, just as long as it does the job. Steve, you're always such a joy and a pleasure to be with. You're such a blessing to the movement. SteveQuayle.com, True Legends. Follow Steve's great work. Steve, I look forward to our next broadcast together. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Dave.